Yo, my name's Deja Marie, and you're listening to Chavez Proud, Chavez Loud podcast, a podcast led by Chavez students discussing current local and national policy issues. Today we have Mr. Cross.
Hello, Deja.
How you doing today?
I'm good.
That's good.
Look at you. I'm glad to be here. I'm just glad to be here with Chavez Loud and Proud.
That's good. So we'll be discussing gentrification today. And my first question is, how do you feel about gentrification displacing people?
I think it's a gentrification and displacement. I think it can be a complicated issue, a topic. But how I feel about it, I think it's shameful. I think it is something that collectively governments, especially local governments and businesses and corporations, have to do a better job of managing. Right? Especially in D.C., we were the most displaced city in America about 5 years ago. So that lets you know how much gentrification and displacement happens here in Washington. And that's definitely something that I'm sure you see and witness. I know I do. And we have to be mindful of it. So it's a very important issue.
How do you feel about southeast and northeast side of Washington, D.C. side being gentrified?
Yeah, I live over here. So I'm also a real estate agent, so I look at it from a few different angles. I live in Southeast, and so it is, and I'm a Washingtonian. I'm from DC. It is fascinating to witness kind of this change as it goes apart. From a real estate standpoint, from a seller standpoint, if there is a benefit, because people are selling their houses for more what they bought them for, so people are making a lot of money. Realtors are making a lot of money. People who are selling houses are making a lot of money. People who are buying houses at the right time are getting a lot of money in terms of equity, in terms of being able to buy a house and then hold on to it, and then that house being worth more later. So I'm sure some people like it. The struggle is that when you look at communities like Kenilworth, like Berry Farms, that are being quote unquote gentrified or reconstructed, thousands of families and thousands of people had to leave these places. And although the government and the mayor and these developers saying they're allowed to come back, they're going to be, come back. Most of them don't. Most of them are displaced. Most of them are living in conditions that are less than they were. And then a lot of times when they are coming back, they're coming back to possibly higher rents, higher areas surrounding where they were. So it's kind of unfair. Especially when you're looking at the older population of DC who are on set incomes. If you're on Social Security, you're 60 years old, 70 years old, you're retired. You have a set income. So your rent being raised $500 or can really make or break you. So there are a lot of issues. I think it's great that we are seeing some of the things being developed in Northeast and Southeast DC. Unfortunately, we're displacing people along with that. And I think there's a way to develop without displacement. And that is what developers, and I think, Mayor Bowser in DC are struggling with. And she hasn't done a good job of it, although she's given money to affordable housing. But we look at the displacement numbers. Affordable housing, I think what she's calling affordable housing isn't affordable to a lot of other people. So I think there are things that they need to all work on, developers, politicians, localities, local people. So it is complicated. But in terms of the development coming to Southeast and DC, I think it's great. I live right down the street from the Wizard Center, the Mystic Center. So it's helped my property value, but I've also seen people who've had to move as a result of not being able to afford the increase in property taxes and other things that are happening as a result.
Well, I do agree with you, but I feel like the government and, the mayor should be able to have some type of, I don't want to say shelter, but another type of building where the people with lower income should be able to stay there without actually moving out the city, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like that they shouldn't they should increase the income for people, not just Black people, everybody. But I do agree with what you're saying. I do.
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance, right? So how do you take a building that is struggling, or it's in disarray, and you tell these, let's say 100 families live in this building, that we're going to redevelop this building and we're going to make it mixed income. But we all know it's going to take 3 to 5 years for that to be developed. Like, you have to tear down the old building, have to raise the ground, have to then rebuild everything, got to get permits, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what happens a lot of times, these people who are displaced can't come back or don't, because they've started a new life. So now you're telling me I got to move all the way back in here to do that. So I think we've got to do a better job of that. So, but you're right. We've got to create shelters, or either really have affordable housing. $1,800 a month for a 1-bedroom isn't affordable to everybody. That's a lot of money.
It is.
So I think how is the city, how is the mayor, how are the developers defining affordable housing, and what does that look like? I do know we have inclusionary zoning in DC, which is the opportunity for you. It's geared towards middle income people, but middle income people who are kind of like not low income where you can't get subsidies, but you're also not high income where you can afford to like live in these nice places. So there are some programs in DC. I'm not saying they're not doing anything. I just don't think we're doing enough for the lower end population as we're gentrifying and developing the city.
Okay. My third question is, could you give me an example of the community that have been gentrified, past or present?
Sure. If you look, I used to 13th Street near U Street, right? That was U Street used to be Black Broadway. Used to be this wonderful area. Duke Ellington, all these people used to play there, and they have really taken that street over, and they have made condos and other housing that has displaced many people where this area used to be 100% Black. Now I would argue probably 10 to 20% Black. So you're displacing people, replacing them with younger, richer white people who are then moving into the community and changing, I think, what I would say cultural norms. So remember the whole "Don't Mute DC" thing regarding the go-go music on the corner of what is it, Florida Avenue and 7th, right? Yeah, that's 7th Street because Howard's on the right. Yeah,
Sean Howard.
Exactly. So you have this whole community of new white ignorant people who don't know anything about DC except for the work here, and then you've got this community of go-go people who've been there for decades talking about, well, we can't and we don't want to hear that. Okay, well, welcome to DC. You know what I'm saying? Welcome to DC. That's right. So we have to, but there is that's the difference between, I think, people who come to DC to work and then people who come to DC to live and view it as a community, right? Some people just see this as a place of employment. When you have those people who said, because Howard University in Shaw deals a lot with this, people who are walking, mostly white people, who are walking their animals on Howard University's campus, right? Now, Howard has been there for hundreds of years, and then, that white guy that was in the paper, I think a few years ago, who was saying, well, they should move Howard University. This exactly the same reaction I had. This sort of racism, prejudice, privilege that these people are bringing to DC is quite disgusting.
It's unfair.
And it's and ultimately it's unfair and unjust. But I think that's where we have to have strong community leaders, strong government leaders, to support the people who have been here, who have lived here and been raised here, who want to stay in DC but really can't afford it. DC is very expensive.
It is.
It's very expensive.
And the only reason why it's expensive because it's an urban area.
Exactly. And you're right. And you're actually 100% right. I mean, people are saying by a year 2030, most people in the world are going to live in urban areas, which is why we're expanding up so fast. A lot of new condo buildings. I mean, we look across the street. When I started at Chavez 4 or 5 years ago, we used to practice in this field over here. Now that's new apartment buildings going for $1,800 a month. And I'm not, and this is just my observation. The only people I've seen live there are those three white guys, all who have dogs, and younger people, and this white woman. And so gentrification is about income, but it's also about race. Let's be very clear about that. So it is unfair. I think it's racist, this displacement and this intentional pushing out of people in communities.
Because I feel like, I told a lot of people this now, I feel like they making DC like New York City.
Exactly. Yeah, they are. You're right.
Like they making the income higher, everything, and I feel like that's not right because DC is not New York City.
Exactly, and I think there are ways to do it gradually. Everything can't be so sudden, and this actually has been a gradual thing over the last 10 years. But now that it's here, it's hitting people very hard. So prices have gone up, but incomes are kind of staying still, or people are out of work, or people are still displaced and struggling to find a place to live. So it's complicated, and we've got to do a better job of managing all of that. We really do.
So my fourth question is, why do you think they continue to increase the housing income?
Money. I mean, it's money. Right. It's all about the money. What's the? I think Cardi B had a song called "Money." Right? Money, something like that. Yeah, and you asked a good question. The income in DC has risen from about 180,000 to 549,000 over the last 10 years. That's a huge increase in income. So richer people are coming here. Younger people are coming here, and as a result of the market, the government and the developers are now providing residential housing that kind of matches the income to which people who can afford it can pay for it. Because if I'm a developer and I'm like, okay, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people were making 180,000, but now they're making 549,000. Of course, I'm going to create a higher income bracket for the unit. The problem is, are the people that were still here that aren't making $549,000? I'm not, but have been here and that are now being pushed out and displaced out of DC. I think that is unfair, and I think that's where the government has to do a better job of supporting those people and supporting the community that already exists here. Although DC is being created a new community. You know, it used to be 70% black. It's not 41, I think 30-ish percent black. So 2015 was the first time in the last few decades where DC was no longer a majority black city. You know, used to call it Chocolate City, and now I think they just call it a city. It's just a city. But and again, that goes back to kind of the race part of it. So yes, it's about economics. Gentrification is about economics, about people making money. It's about displacement, but it's really about race issues as well as an underlying belly, because most of the people that are being displaced are poor black people. And where are they going? I don't know. So
my last question is, why do you think they continue to gentrify urban areas instead of rural areas?
Because most people want to be in the city. If you look around the world, and this is just happening in DC, Oakland, Miami, Boston,
all the major cities.
People want to move back into the cities, right? But also around the world, even in Africa, a lot of people live near the center city. The difference is obviously there's not this gentrification. So urban living is what people want to do, right? That's the new wave. And in America, though, to make it more focused on America, this is as a result of kind of reverse white flight, right? So white people in the 80s and 90s left the cities, right? They wanted to be in the suburbs. They didn't want to be around certain people, and they wanted to have their own suburban community. Now what we're seeing is this reversalism, right? So now they want to come back in the city, want to be back here, want to be back close in the urban living where things are more convenient. There's more resources, there's more stores, all these things. But as a result of this privilege that they have in this wielding of economic power, it is forcing a lot of black folk out, right? So, and then a lot of older black people in DC also die, right? That's what happens. And they're giving their houses to their younger children. And their younger children, young white guy comes and say, hey, I'll give you $300,000 cash for your house. And you're a young black guy, you don't know anything. You're like, okay. So you sell your house, not knowing that the house is probably worth $500,000, right? So they put $100,000 in it. They end up selling the house for $600,000, $700,000. So The other thing about the community, our community, we've got to educate people on it. I think that's why I think you're doing a good job talking about. We've got to educate our people. I'm trying to scratch my ear. I forgot these are on. We've got to remember to educate people on property values, on real estate, on economic value as things in the city are changing, but we don't have to give them over. I mean, there's a pastoral group that I only know my dad is a part of that. These pastors who are part of black churches in the city are going around educating people black people on the value of their homes, right? Mm-hmm. Because the other thing we see is black churches in DC, especially in central DC, people, even before the pandemic, a lot of people aren't attending because they don't live in the area anymore. Mm-hmm. They can't afford it. They've had or either they moved to, PG or whatever. So this whole reverse flight thing is really taking effect because people want to live in the city, but we've got to do a better job of educating you all about it. Own some property, get some property. I'm telling you, make some money, but also holding our city leaders accountable to making sure that there is affordable housing, that there are pathways to jobs to support people so that they can afford to stay in the city that they love and grew up in. Because it is quite unfair, I think.
Mm-hmm. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm happy that you came.
Well, I am too, Deja G. Let me tell you, I'm open to come back anytime to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. This is fun.
I got you. Well, thanks for coming, and you're listening to Chavez Proud and Loud podcast.
All right.